afternoon and welcome to the IBD podcast, Past, Present and Future. Today our guest is Abhishek Banik. Abhi is the head distiller at the Copper Rivet Distillery, which is the home of Malthouse Whiskey, Dockyard Gin and Vela Vodka in Chatham in Kent. Now, Abhi, as you'll hear, has taken the distillery from an idea into a kind of thriving operation, producing a range of brands that has got a really great global reach. He's also the director of Spirit Sense Limited, where he designs custom brewing and distilling equipment and provides consultancy services for a variety of brands, helping them to bring their visions to life. Abhi comes with a deep technical background, honed through years of hands-on experience and an MSc in brewing and distilling from Heriot-Watt University. And in doing so, Abhi has guided delivery setups and product development across the UK. And he's won awards for his vodkas and his bespoke grain and malt whiskies. He has a long-standing relationship with the IBD, having served as a young member representative for the Scottish section, where he advocated for the next generation of industry professionals. And he brings a really global perspective to his work. As a certified trainer at the IBD and a proud liveryman of the Worshipful Company of Distillers, he's not only shaping the products, but also inspiring the next generation of distillers. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Abhi to the podcast. And let's dive into his journey. So good afternoon, Abhi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
All right. It's a pleasure. And thank you for your time. So just to start, you're a distiller, you're a teacher, you're a scientist. Tell us about some of the key themes on your journey that kind of pull those things together.
Well, it has been a while now that things have started. Starting at Heriot-Watt University, studying brewing and distilling, then teaching there, and then carried down to help different distilleries to shape different distilleries, starting from a few distilleries in Scotland, Ogilvy being one of the distilleries, Ogilvy Vodka. Then actually I moved my full focus to Copper Rivet as well, getting it from idea, feasibility to a multidisciplinary distillery. Let me move around so I can show you the distillery while I'm here. So I'm actually sitting at the distillery at the moment. And when we designed Copper Rivet, the whole idea was from the start itself to understand how can you make a distinctive distillery. Though we are a very small scale distillery, but the whole idea was from the start itself to put all the seeds of innovation, sustainability, local provenance, local craftsmanship, all these things in it itself. So it's a great example where we are today. So I'm quite pleased to be sitting at Copper Rivet today. And looking back, start to the days of Heriot-Watt University, starting with IBD there itself. And I'm very pleased to see that how the industry is growing now, specifically distilling industry now in the southern section as well. So,
and as I understand it, Copper Rivet is the only whiskey distillery in Kent. Am I right?
Yes, Copper Rivet is the only whiskey distillery in Kent.
And I understand, and I think you alluded to it there, that grain is a really important part of your kind of product and your development. So you've got this whole grain to glass ethos, only using grain that's sourced from within 20 miles of the dockyard. Can you explain why that's such an important part of your distilling process?
So when we were designing the basics of Copper Rivet, when Bob, Matthew, Stephen, they are the founders of Copper Rivet. They are the visionaries who wanted to have this distillery. And they asked me, I was actually at Heriot-Watt at the time, used to teach brewing and distilling, mainly distilling labs. So they reached out to Heriot-Watt to say that we want to set up a distillery. Can you guys help? So Dr. Annie Hill introduced me to them. And the first question they asked, actually, when we were sitting down, he was like, how can we be a distillery different than others, right? And at that time, the vision was to set up a gin distillery. But then we said the way to do it would be to grain to glass, because very few people do it. And why very few people do it? Because it's difficult. It's a big undertaking. people do not understand. I mean, I even didn't understand at that time how much control and supervision and vision you need to have the planning in place to start growing the grain, thinking about storing of them, malting, then production, flavor control, and then if you're making whiskey, another approach of another 5 to 6 years of planning. So you're talking about here, there is almost like 10 years of vision you need to have at one point of time, backward and forward kind of thing.
And so was it more about having that overall sense of control over every aspect of the process, rather than I need this particular type of grain done in this particular type of way to get the flavors that you were looking for?
Yes.
Or was it a bit of both?
Yes, no, I mean, the whole thing. So, for example, one thing we say, Copper Rivet, we are distillate forward. Now, what does it mean? It means, see, for example, in whiskey industry, for example, okay, what my understanding goes, blenders are doing a great job, right? They take samples from the barrels and they say, oh, this smells great. If they are recreating a product again and again, they know how to blend them to have the consistency. But if they're creating a new product, what happens in the industry is they'll say, okay, I want to create this flavor. Let me see which barrels can I use, right? Think about that. For us, it's the other way around. We say, this is the whiskey we want to create. This is the flavor we want to create. Now, how do I create that flavor from scratch? So we study the whiskey that we want to create the flavor. Now break it down to each and individual process, from finish of the maturation to the grain to use. Okay, and I have to grow them. So that's why for us, knowing individual process is very important, because we start with the end in mind. That's what I'm talking about. For us, the whole idea of a process of product development is a 6 to 10 years of planning.
Yeah.
And implementing it. So yeah,
and how did that start to become practical though? So did you say these are the seeds? Did you go and find local farmers or producers and you said these are the seeds that we want you to grow in this particular way so that we have them at this point? Well, was it how did you get people on board with the vision?
So I think IBD played a big role on that, because during my days in Hereford and IBD in Scotland, we did a lot of study on different grains, what kind of flavors it produces. Then IBD publish every year the list of grains, IBD approved grains for malt distillation, for grain distillation. We also use that reference. So for example, we grow our own barley for our grain whiskey production, our neutral production, and we will grow our own barley that gets malted to produce our single malt, right? For example, so I have to go and look into IBD references saying that what is the barley we should grow that can I use in both the sections. We spoke to maltings. So what is the kind of barley and wheat and all these things we can grow? So I reached out to all the resources and then say, right, these are the grains we can grow. But before that was the flavor idea concept, right? We were talking about what are the flavors we want in our whiskey. So to give you an example, our grain whiskey is a mixed bill, mash bill, so which has got raw rye, raw wheat, raw barley, and malted barley. Now, that is a very complex process to put together, is because it has got all different flavors working together. How did we decide to do that? So we looked into different whiskeys from the world, and I said, right, really, that sweet spiciness that you find in American, some of the American bourbon, that is great. But we want to cut the spiciness in it. We want to have some that creates a long finish, but the spiciness and the body. Okay, then we talk about Irish whiskeys, the single pot where they use raw barley as well. It has got a spicy nuttiness. I was like, that is beautiful as well. So then if you think about Olden, some of the old grain whiskeys, not old actually, nowadays you're getting, that has been produced from wheat. That is really creamy, okay? Distinctively different than the grain whiskeys produced from corn that was used in olden days, maize or corn. So it's like, right, we want that wheat as well. So we came to an understanding of the flavor that we want to create. Then we said, right, in that case, we need these are the different grains. Then we did the research on what are in the field of grains, which is the best variety to use. So it was a long research thing to get into it. And then we just carry on every year, topping up our information on that grain. Another thing in Kent is we have a different soil structure. So you think about the word terroir, which is typically used in the wine industry. We have got a microclimate in Kent. At the same time, we've got a different kind of soil structure. So our farmers were also very helpful. So we reached out to see which is a farmer that can work with us, and reached to quite a few farmers. And I think all the farmers that reached out to us was very interested. But we started working with a farmer called Bird & Brothers. They're one of the biggest farmer in Kent, I believe. Might not be true, to my knowledge. But they were straight away into it, because those guys were also, apart from farming, they were very much entrepreneurial. So they were like, that is something new we want to do as well. So they literally straight jumped into it. And their farm manager at that time was very, very keen. So amazing. So we got to go started with a great farming partner straight away.
Amazing.
Who helped us. Yeah.
And let me just ask you, so it sounds like you didn't travel down a particular path in terms of the type or style of whiskey that you were looking to produce. So you're combining all these different elements. You've got new soils, you've got all sorts of things. Is that a heck of a risk? So that in terms of when do you know if that risk is, what's the kind of the time length of development, and at what point do you think, yeah, we've got Mast House, this is the one I've got? Or have you got different streams going in development at the same time? Or is that risk a fact of life?
Well, it is you're right. It is a fact of life. Yeah. But the whole, we had this ethos that we want to be different as a distillery, that we want to do the things the hard ways. I'm not sure is the right way of saying, that we want to do the research. Okay. Yeah. We just don't want to follow tradition because it has worked. For us, that never interested us. For us, knowing the unknown was very important, right? And that we thought we kept from the start itself, that is going to differentiate us. And that is also going to give us a lot of answers to create new styles of whiskey. Yeah. Because as I said, we didn't want to be the traditionalist. We wanted to bring in differences. We wanted to bring in revolution. And in England, there was no English whiskey charter or regulations. That was another thing. It was like, we want to bring in the new wave of blood or flavor, introduce new categories. Yeah. So we want to be that people who want to experiment. So yes, for the first 3 years, it was pretty much we are on the vague waters that will it turn out the way we wanted it to be? Because we were almost, to an extent, sounds like we're building castle in the cloud, right? Yeah. Yeah, it is all theoretical.
Well, you're all in, aren't you?
Yeah, all theoretical. But when we studied all throughout the time, we said, right, we're going to do this now. We want that outcome. So we had measurables. We had measurables in every stages, right? It is not that we said, oh, we want to do it, and we should do all these things to achieve there, and let's see. No, we created measurables to achieve a particular flavor in 4 years' time. And we monitored it, and we said, yes, it is working. Yes, it is working. So when the 3 years came, and the whiskey could be called legally whiskey, and we said, right, let's start the flavors. And we said, right, we have done. The measurables was for us very important because that becomes then our set points. So for example, it's like to achieve that flavor, we need to do this thing. So we created.
And were those measurables born out of your academic work at Heriot-Watt? In terms of, I know you did a lot of work on botanicals whilst you were there. What are the things that you've taken from Heriot-Watt and you've applied in your professional rather than academic life? What are the kind of key principles that you've brought from Heriot-Watt?
So when I was in Heriot-Watt I did a lot of KTP projects, right? So the academic side of
KTP is
knowledge transfer protocol projects. A lot of them, like 21 of those when I was there with Annie Hill, which I did with the small and micro distilleries in Scotland all around. Yeah. So before I started doing that, I was mainly academic, right? I have read all the theories and books, but then while I was teaching in the lab, I was implementing them, or checking, experimenting to say that, right, I read that, but I've not experienced it. So doing the teaching labs also helped me to grow on that side. And then when we did the KTPs, all the questions that people have, I was like, what happens if you do this? Now, in Scotland, when you're making whiskies, you've got far more regulations than England. So even though people had their questions, they didn't have the ability to implement that in their products. But they had the questions, and it came to me. So during those research and education at that time, it was brilliant. I was like,
it's like you're learning on somebody else's projects.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was like, this is brilliant. That's what. So all those learning. So I then developed, and it helped to develop what Copper Rivet stands now for, and the products.
Yeah, brilliant. And then in terms of Copper Rivet, so I understand you started with gin, then moved on to vodka, and then through finally into whiskey. Talk us through that progression from a scientific and a technical perspective. And was it was that always the idea, or was that something that iteratively evolved?
So, as I said, when we first met with Matthew, Stephen, and Bob in 2012, it was meant to be a gin distillery, right? But a gin distillery with difference. So from the start itself, we said, right, we're going to grow our grains and make our neutral ourselves. That's why we always plan to have a column still, right? But as we all know, spirit still, we also need a wash still. So we had a wash still. But then the whole idea of flavor creation was always in my head, that we want to be like a brewer rather than a distiller who do single mash, just towards alcohol. We said, no, we're going to be controlling the flavor, because if we're making our neutral, we want to control what is the flavor of the neutral is going to be. Though the neutral is the wrong word, 96.4, let's say, alcohol, that is going to be the minimum requirement for gin. So we want to control it. So we had a 2-vessel brew house system. So when we were doing that, the question kept on rising, right? We're making our neutral. That means we can make vodka. Yes, of course we can make vodka. Yeah. And it was like, right, we've got pot stills. Can we make whiskey? Yes, we can make whiskey. So all these questions was asked at the initial part itself. It shows how Matthew, Stephen, and Bob are switched on and say that what all we can do, not just going to be, we just don't want to be known as a gin distillery. We want to be a multidisciplinary. That from the start itself, was the idea when we started sketching our production plan, our process equipment designs and all these things. Because everything in here is designed by us, by me, and then locally fabricated. So we had the option to introduce new technologies or what we need to make it flexible, to make it multidisciplinary.
You must talk me through that. So as well as grain to glass, you're also clearly fully involved in the equipment that controls that process. Why is that? Are you is what you're doing so different that you need to get different pieces of equipment to do it, or you want things in a particular way? How did the engineering side come about? Again, it must have time, mustn't it? So
again, now going back to what I mentioned before, that here we are distillate focused distillery. So we have an end in mind, right?
Yeah.
If we want to create a particular flavor and not rely on what the nature has to give and the flavor it will produce, we need to control each and element where flavor could be introduced or influenced, right? So we studied that in brewing and distilling, what are the parameters that can influence the flavor or create flavor or reduce flavor? So we have studied literally holistically the whole process and say, right, I need this, I need this, I need this to create or have a hold on the flavor, so that I know if I want to create a new flavor, which dial to change, right? Which dial to implement. This is why we grow our grains, so we know what grains to grow, right? We work with the maltings to say, right, I do not want a distiller's malt, but I want a pale malt, because we want that flavor that you get in the beer. When you have a light pale ale, the beautiful flavor of the malt and all. And I was like, I want to capture that into our whiskey, but not too nutty, not too malty, which we find in some of the malt whiskeys. So we said, right, why do we get that nuttiness to very maltiness? It is a sparge water, second and third sparges. So we do not have a second and third sparge water at all. We use fresh water every time. Okay. Flavor creation. How do brewers create all these different flavors of beer? By almost using similar kind of malt, or changing the profile, by changing the raw materials and changing the mashing, infusion techniques. So we needed to have a brew house like a brewer. So all these things were put in place so that we can control individual aspects of production to get to where we want to be.
And so that must have been a really collaborative process between yourself and the owners in terms of having that shared vision and then taking the time to do things in the very precise way that you've done it. So how would you describe your approach to work, and what are the characteristics that you look for with the people that you want to kind of work and collaborate with?
So the most important thing, you're right. I think Matthew, Bob, and Stephen has always been very, their vision has been futuristic, which is great. They always wanted to, well, we respect tradition, right? But then we always look for, can we make it any better? Can we learn something new? So it is about introducing new technologies. It's about introducing new ideas, and they have always been open for it. And Bob, who is the dad, he has always been so supportive. First of all, saying that new ideas, he wants to know about it, he wants to learn about it. And Stephen and Matthew all been supportive. And I was quite lucky in a way that they actually had that trust on me. As I said, I was building ideas based on theories, though much of the theories has been trialed before, and I knew we can achieve that. But big part of that is actually what you have trialed in the lab, scaling it up in production scale and still keeping the same. A big example would be our gin still, which is the only patented gin still in the world at the moment, right? They had a big faith on me to take the leap of faith of investing the money to put in the patenting process. That was really expensive process. It took us 3 years, a lot of time with patent solicitors and all these things. So that shows their motivation and their dedication to make a change in the world, where they were actually stepping in.
I've met one of the sons at the English Whisky Guild event at the Houses of Parliament last year, and he's told me a bit of the story behind, and you're playing it back exactly as he spoke about it. So it sounds like a really great partnership. And as well as Copper Rivet, you've got a broad range of other roles. So you're a liveryman at the Worshipful Company. You've been an IBD trainer. You have your own kind of, is it the Senses of Spirits consultancy? How do you make your choices in terms of what you say yes to and what you say no to?
Well, I think it's very simple, isn't it? If there is a great project, you can see through it, and you say yes to it. But if it is same project with a different makeup on it, well, there is more other people who are more capable to take those projects. So, that's how you need to dedicate your time into projects that can make real changes into the market.
It sounds like you've got a real sense of who you are and what's right for you and what the things are that would interest you, and you put your time into those rather than, okay, somebody comes to you with an idea that's not quite you, and so you'll say, okay, well, maybe that's for somebody else. I think that's a really kind of special trait to have. And in terms of your relationship with the IBD, so you've been with the IBD for a while. How has the IBD supported you throughout your career, or how has it been a part of your career?
I think I always liked learning and enjoyed learning new things. And I think IBD have a special place in my heart from Heriot itself. I joined IBD in 2006. So it is going to be 20 years in 2 years' time. So that I've been part of IBD.
Thank you.
So, and when we're learning in Heriot or any university, let's say when a student is learning at a university, who is given them so much knowledge to do, knowledge to absorb, but many times we lack the chance of seeing it implemented. And through IBD, which is a great network of individuals in the industry, it made possible for us to go and see those techniques implemented. For example, I was not an engineering student when I was doing my undergrad, right? So when I was doing a Heriot and we had the process engineering class, everything used to go above my head. I was like, oh God. But Brian Eaton, who I still consider as my biggest mentor, he said to me, when I asked him which module should I take, and he said, take the process engineering one. And I was like, really? Oh God. Fine. I was like, I'll take process engineering because, and the things that I was sitting and learning in there at that time, and I was sitting, when am I going to implement that? But you won't believe all those things that we learned at Heriot and then went and saw with IBD across all those visits, and IBD made those visits possible, right? I have done many times. We only travel to countries where there is cities where there's breweries and distilleries. That's our holiday, right? But whenever we're traveling, we give a call and say, oh, I'm an IBD member as well. And it just opened doors, it gives you it gives you access to so much knowledge and so much skilled individuals, that you can learn from them so much. So I think Heriot has given me the knowledge, but IBD has given me the experience. That I can link those knowledge to. I can see how to implement those knowledges.
And I think that's really special. One of the most special things about the IBD in terms of the IBD's qualification and learning is online now, but we must never lose that sense of energy and network and connection through the section visits or the kind of study tours or what have you, because there you get unparalleled access to people and places that are at the cutting edge or have got shared things that they are thinking about that other brewers or other distillers will be thinking about. So in terms of those key scientific and technical challenges, what are the things that you're currently thinking about? And what do you think the kind of industry really is focused on at the moment, and that the IBD needs to kind of consider in order to be, maintain its relevance?
I think one thing great, IBD will always, I think, evolve and bring in new things. And I think the Southern Section, what they're doing, the sustainability conference next year, is going to be, I'm hoping, the expectation I have from it is great, because what we always feel, what I've always seen being part of a network of small businesses is we just did not have that fund and the resources that big distilleries have. And it has always been a problem. That's why the growth of small distilleries is hindered for not having that capacity of doing research. Well, IBD is providing that research and making it available. So I think in future, now we all talking about sustainability at the moment. And I think people should take a step back and look into, stop just talking about sustainability and actually see what they are doing already and just get better at it, right? Rather than chasing about new sustainability techniques, look into what they are doing already and make better at it. And I think IBD will play a big role in the next few years and bringing those research and maybe highlighting those simpler, sustainable measurements that the people can have in their own place. That will help them.
I think by way of demonstration on that, so at the sustainability event last year that the Southern Section hosted down at Fuller's in Chiswick, that was a really good combination of scientific theory, but then also small brewers' perspectives in terms of stories and the initiatives the stories that they were telling and the initiatives that they were developing, and the two-way discussion between the suppliers and the brewers. And I think what the IBD does when it's at its best is it connects that ecosystem. I think with the new 2-day sustainability workshop that we will be hosting next July in Nottingham, I think our challenge will be to curate the 2 days and to curate the content so that we've got that combination of academia, supplier best practice, brewer perspective, distiller perspective, and what have you. So there's a really well curated technical program that people can come and present at, whether they're a kind of student or whether they're a kind of industry practitioner and what have you. So we are super excited about that and really looking forward to it. Well, Abby, that's absolutely great. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to do it with the background of your kind of life's work behind you. And as I understand it, that Copper Rivet are very welcoming to people who want to come and have tours and see everything in practice.
100%. So we are open. We are open. We have, as I said, I have learned all this practice in Scotland, and I've seen how the distilleries are always open to share information, help people to grow. So we also have the exact same ethos at Copper Rivet here as well. So we're open. We're also open we also do tours for general public as well. But anyone in IBD is always welcome to come down, knock at the door. I will say, rather knock at the door, email will be better to to organize it. We're always open. And you can see Somit, who is down there now. Somit is a Heritage Ward graduate.
Okay.
He's actually taking some of the university people around today that we wanted to learn a little bit more about brewing and distilling, how we can. They're doing some research on spent grain, port ale, sustainability things as well. So we're going to sit down with them and maybe do some great research for upcoming years.
That's fascinating, and it's great to see you playing forward your knowledge, which again is hopefully what the IBD and the network is all around. So thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.